I told my boyfriend. My ex treated me better, just to hurt him. When he ignored me, I met my ex again to prove a point, and he blocked me forever. I was so disappointed in him. He was too weak to handle the truth. Marcelo is a good man. If you ask my friends, my mother, or anyone who has seen us together, they will tell you that I hit the jackpot. He is stable, he is affectionate in his own way, and he has that calm that at the beginning of our 2-year relationship seemed like a refuge to me. After the chaotic roller coaster that was my previous relationship with Javier, Marcelo's tranquility felt like reaching a safe harbor after a storm. We built a life together, a comfortable routine of weekday dinners, Netflix series, and future plans that, although not exciting, gave me a sense of security I didn't know I needed. However, calm over time can feel like stagnation. The small details that I didn't care about at first began to turn into thorns. Marcelo is a practical man. His way of showing love is to make sure my car has its oil changed or that the air conditioning works in the summer. They are noble gestures, I suppose, but they lack poetry. I long for flowers for no reason, unexpected love notes, spontaneous plans. I long for the kind of romance that makes you feel like the protagonist of your own movie. And Marcelo, in his pragmatism, seems to believe that love is a construction project, not a work of art. Inevitably, my mind sometimes travels to the past, to Javier, and I know it's toxic, I know I shouldn't, but I can't help it. My memory, with its rose-colored filter, has erased the horrible fights and constant anxiety, and has only left the grand gestures. Javier was a master of romance. He wrote me poems, surprised me with weekend getaways, made me feel like the most desired woman on the planet. Our relationship was a wildfire, destructive and exciting in equal parts. And although I know I got burned, sometimes in the quiet security of my life with Marcelo, I miss the heat of the flames. This comparison, I know, is unfair, but it has become a ghost in our relationship, a silent third occupant in our apartment. Sometimes, when Marcelo does something eminently practical and unromantic, I hear a whisper in my head. Javier wouldn't have done that. Javier would have brought flowers. I try to silence that voice, but in moments of frustration it gets louder and louder until it becomes a scream that threatens to shatter the comfortable silence of our life. I don't want to lose Marcelo. I love his kindness. I love the peace he gives me. But there is a part of me, an impulsive and chaotic part, that sometimes wants to set that peace on fire just to see if he would be willing to run through the flames for me. It's a horrible idea, I know, but the need for a test, for a passionate reaction that validates his feelings, has become almost an obsession. The argument, like almost all great catastrophes, began with a trifle. It was our 2-year anniversary. I had spent the whole day with a butterfly of expectation in my stomach. I didn't expect a trip to Paris, but I did expect something, a detail, a surprise plan, a dinner at that new restaurant I had told him about. When he got home from work, he gave me a kiss and handed me a bag. Inside was a new set of nonstick pans that I had mentioned we needed last week. "Happy anniversary, my love," he said with a proud smile, "so we can cook together more often." I stared at the pans. Pans for our anniversary. I felt a wave of disappointment so cold and heavy that it almost choked me. I tried to hide it, I thanked him, but the spark of my excitement had been completely extinguished. "And for dinner," he continued, oblivious to my inner storm, "I ordered our usual pizza. That way you don't have to cook." And that was it. That was his grand romantic gesture, some pans and a delivery pizza. Dinner passed in a tense silence. I answered in monosyllables, pushing the food around on my plate. He finally noticed. "Is something wrong, Elena? You seem strange." And that simple question opened the floodgates. All the accumulated frustration of months, all the small disappointments, came pouring out. I told him about my expectations, about my need to feel special. Not just a roommate to whom you give kitchen utensils. The argument escalated quickly. He became defensive. But we needed them. I thought it was a practical, useful gift. I try to be considerate. And I answered him, "I don't want you to be practical, Marcelo. I want you to be romantic. I want you to think about me, about what would make me excited, not about what's missing in the kitchen." We got into a vicious circle of accusations. He called me ungrateful and dramatic. I called him insensitive and boring. Every word was a blow, and I felt like I was losing. He was taking refuge in his pragmatic logic, and I was drowning in my own emotion. I needed a weapon, something that could pierce his armor of calm and really hurt him, something that would make him understand the depth of my disappointment. And in the heat of the moment, my brain, in an act of betrayal and desperation, provided it. I pulled out the nuclear weapon from my emotional arsenal, the one I knew would cause the most damage. "You just don't get it," I shouted, getting up from my chair, my voice trembling with a rage that was both real and performative. "It's not about the pans, it's about the detail, about showing that you listen to me, that you care about me more than the functionality of this house." He crossed his arms. His face was a mask of frustration. "Of course I care about you, Elena. I show you every day. I show you I love you by building a life with you, not with empty gestures." The phrase "empty gestures" was the spark that lit the powder. In my mind, that phrase was a direct attack on Javier, on the memory of him, on the kind of love I secretly longed for. It was as if Marcelo had insulted the only part of me that still felt alive and passionate. And in that instant I stopped thinking, I just reacted. "Empty gestures?" I snapped. My voice went up an octave. "I wish you had the decency to make an empty gesture once in a while." I walked over to him, pointing my finger at him. I was losing control and a part of me was enjoying it. You know what? At least Javier remembered these things. At least he didn't give me pans for our anniversary. He knew how to treat a woman. The phrase hung in the air between us, vibrating with poison. The moment it left my mouth, a small part of me regretted it, but the larger part felt powerful. I had found the crack in his armor. I had managed to wipe that expression of logical superiority from his face. And for a second, I felt victorious. I saw the impact of my words on his face. It was like watching a glass break in slow motion. The color drained from his cheeks. The frustration in his eyes was replaced by something much deeper, something I couldn't identify at the time, but now I know was a mortal wound. The silence that followed was louder than any of our screams. I had crossed a line and we both knew it, but in my head it was a line he had forced me to cross. It was just a figure of speech. People say things they don't mean when they're angry. He had to understand that. The silence stretched for what felt like a lifetime. Marcelo stood there looking at me, not with anger, but with an expression of absolute, chilling calm. It was as if the storm had passed and left behind a desolate landscape. There was no more emotion on his face, just a terrible stillness. I waited for him to shout, to answer me, for the fight to continue, but he didn't. Finally, after an eternity, he nodded slowly, as if he had just solved a complex mathematical problem in his head. "You're right," he said. His voice was so low and so devoid of emotion that I could barely hear it. I froze. What was I right about? Was he admitting his lack of romanticism? For a moment, I felt a surge of hope. Maybe he had finally understood, but then he continued. "If he treated you so well," he said, and every word was a piece of ice, "then I don't know what you're doing here wasting your time with me." He got up from his chair, not with the fury I expected, but with a deliberate slowness, as if he were moving underwater. "You should call him. Go with him. Clearly, he's the one who can give you what you need." I was speechless. This was not part of the script. He was supposed to beg, to promise he would change, not to agree with me and show me the door. "Marcelo, wait," I stammered, panic starting to climb up my throat. "I didn't mean it, it was just..." I was angry. People say things. He raised a hand to stop me without even looking at me. "No, I understood perfectly," he said. He went to the guest room, the one we used as an office, and came out with a pillow and a blanket. Without another word, he lay down on the couch, turned his back to me, and covered himself up to his head. The argument was over, not with an explosion, but with a blackout. I stood in the middle of the living room, trembling, the echo of my own cruel words bouncing off the silence. I had wanted a reaction, and I had gotten one, but it was a reaction I didn't know how to handle, one that threatened to completely erase me from his life. The next 24 hours were a torture of silence and distance. Marcelo slept on the couch. The next morning he got up and went to work before I woke up. I sent him a flood of messages. I'm so sorry, I didn't really mean it. I was just angry. Please, talk to me. There was no response. The 2 blue check marks on WhatsApp were proof that he had read them, but his silence was an insurmountable wall. When he came back from work that night, the atmosphere in the apartment was suffocating. I tried to talk to him, but he ignored me. He made himself a sandwich, ate standing in the kitchen, and then went back to his cocoon on the couch. I felt like a ghost in my own home. The initial guilt began to mix with a growing indignation. Was he really going to crucify me for a single sentence, a stupid sentence said in the heat of a fight? Didn't he remember all the times I had forgiven his little oversights, his lack of attention? On the 3rd day, the wall of silence broke, but not in the way I expected. I came home and found him packing clothes into a backpack. I'm going to my brother's for a few days, he said without looking at me. I need to think. And he left. And since then, nothing. Absolute silence. He doesn't answer my calls, he doesn't read my messages. It's as if I've ceased to exist for him. And now I'm here alone, in our silent apartment, replaying the scene over and over. And the more I think about it, the more unfair it seems. Yes, I made a mistake. I said something horrible. But isn't love also about knowing how to forgive? Isn't it about understanding that people aren't perfect, that sometimes anger makes us say things we don't mean? It was just a figure of speech. People say things they don't mean when they're angry. His reaction, this punishment of silence, this flight, is so disproportionate that it almost cancels out my own guilt. He is treating me like a criminal for a verbal slip. Instead of fighting for us, of talking, of shouting if necessary, he has chosen the easiest way out, indifference. And that hurts more than any insult. He is showing me that I am not high enough on his list of priorities to deserve a fight. And as the loneliness of this apartment envelopes me, a bitter question forms in my mind. Who is the one who really doesn't know how to treat the person they love here? Popular Reddit comments on the main story. Anonymous User 1. Your sentence. People say things they don't mean when they're angry is the universal excuse of those who use words as weapons and then refuse to take responsibility for the wounds they cause. In the heat of an argument is precisely when the ugliest and deepest truths come to light. It was not a verbal slip, it was ammunition that you consciously kept and that you decided to use to hurt in the most effective way possible. Your boyfriend is not reacting to the words, he is reacting to the truth that those words revealed, that you constantly compare him and find him wanting. OP's response. That's completely unfair. It's not a deep truth. I don't want to go back to Javier, it was a horrible relationship. I just used the wrong example at the worst possible moment. It was a tactical error, not a confession of my true feelings. Marcelo knows I love him, or he should know. If a stupid sentence can erase 2 years of love, then that love was never as strong as I thought. His reaction says more about his insecurity than about my intentions. Anonymous User 2. You idealize your ex Javier as a master of romance, but you describe your relationship as a destructive wildfire. You don't see the contradiction. It seems you equate drama, volatility, and anxiety with passion. And conversely, you equate Marcelo's stability, kindness, and pragmatism with being boring. Marcelo didn't break up with you because of the pans, or even because of the sentence itself. He broke up with you because that sentence confirmed to him that you long for a type of chaos that he, as a healthy man, cannot and does not want to provide. You can't complain about a fire and then blame the water for not burning. OP's response. It's not that I long for chaos, it's that I long to feel something, to feel that I matter enough for someone to be passionate, even in a fight. Marcelo's calm sometimes feels like indifference. And no, Javier wasn't perfect, but at least with him I felt things, good and bad. With Marcelo, sometimes I feel a calm so flat that it scares me. I don't want a fire, but I don't want a desert either. And that's what I felt that night, that I was dying of emotional thirst, and he offered me a functional gift. Anonymous User 3. Your boyfriend gave you a golden opportunity to resolve the conflict in a mature way. When you told him you were disappointed, he defended himself with logic. I thought it was a practical gift. Instead of accepting that his intentions were good, even if his execution was clumsy, You decided to escalate the situation and use the nuclear weapon of comparison. You punished him for not being a mind reader. Now you complain about his silence, but it was you who closed the door to reasonable communication the moment you invoked the ghost of your ex-OP's response. But it's not the first time. We've been at this for months. I drop hints, I talk to him about things I like, and he seems not to listen. It's not about reading minds, it's about paying attention. My frustration wasn't just about the pans, it was about the pattern of not feeling heard. The comparison with Javier was the last resort, a desperate way to make him understand the magnitude of my disappointment. It was a cry for help, and instead of hearing the pain behind the words, he obsessed over the words themselves. Update 1. It's been 10 days, 10 days of a silence so deep that it has eaten me up inside. Panic has become my natural state. I wake up in the morning with my heart racing, and the first thing I do is check my phone, hoping for a message that never comes. Veronica, my only confidant in this disaster, has been giving me contradictory advice ranging from give him space to show up at his work and force him to talk. I finally decided I couldn't wait any longer. I had to do something to show him that my words had been stupid and that I didn't feel anything for Javier. And then I came up with a plan. It was a twisted logic, I see it now, but in my state of panic it seemed like a stroke of genius. I had to prove to Marcelo that my idealization of Javier was false, and to do that I had to talk to Javier himself. My plan was this. I would contact Javier with some silly excuse. He, with his usual ego, would surely be unpleasant or indifferent. And I could then report back to Marcelo with proof that my ex was an idiot and that my words in the fight meant nothing. It was a way of demonstrating my loyalty through a concrete action. I found an old sweatshirt of his in the back of my closet. The perfect excuse. I wrote him a message. Hi, Javi. I hope you're well. I found a sweatshirt of yours and I'd like to return it. Can we have a quick coffee this week? To my surprise, he replied almost instantly. Elena. What a surprise. Of course. Tomorrow afternoon. His enthusiasm threw me off a bit, but I went ahead with the plan. We met at a coffee shop and my plan disintegrated in the first 5 minutes. Instead of being the egocentric idiot I needed him to be, Javier was charming. He asked me about my life with genuine interest. He complimented me. He told me I looked amazing. He remembered inside jokes from our relationship. He spoke with nostalgia about the good times. With every smile, with every compliment, my resolve weakened. The validation I had so desperately missed in my fight with Marcelo, Javier was serving it to me on a silver platter. The coffee turned into 2 and the conversation flowed, full of a dangerous flirtation that made me feel guilty and alive at the same time. I left there more confused than ever. Javier's validation, instead of giving me clarity, had muddied the waters even more. That night, in an act of impulsiveness and an even more twisted logic, I wrote to Marcelo. It was no longer a simple apology, it was a clumsy and manipulative attempt to use Javier to provoke a reaction. You're right, I wrote. Talking to Javier was a mistake, but at least he knows how to listen and make a girl feel special. It has made me realize a lot of things. I hit send, hoping that a pang of jealousy would make him react. The only result was that the 2 blue check marks on my previous messages permanently became 1. He had blocked me. Popular Reddit comments on the update. 1. Anonymous user. 4. Every decision you make is worse than the last. Genius plan consisted of using your ex to manipulate your boyfriend. And when the pawn didn't behave as you expected, you used him in another way to try to provoke jealousy. You have gone from using a verbal comparison to creating a comparison in real life. You have shown Marcelo that when you feel insecure, your first instinct is to run to another man for validation. Blocking you was not an overreaction, it was an act of self-preservation. OP's response. I wasn't trying to provoke jealousy. I was trying to be honest about my confused feelings. I was trying to show him that his silence was pushing me to seek comfort elsewhere. It was a warning, a way-up call. If he had answered me, if he had given me a minimum of security, I would never have had to talk to Javier. He created this situation with his wall of silence. I am just reacting to his actions or lack thereof. Anonymous user 5. Javier is giving you exactly what you want to hear because he is a predator who has smelled blood in the water. He sees that you are vulnerable and he is playing his part perfectly. It's not that he knows how to listen, it's that he knows what you want to hear to lower your defenses. Meanwhile, Marcelo, the man who gave you a healthy relationship, refuses to participate in your toxic games. You are running from the medicine and running towards the poison because the poison tastes sweeter at first. OP's response. I don't think Javier is a predator. I think he is a man who, like me, remembers the good things about our relationship and perhaps regrets how they ended. His kindness confused me. Yes, but I don't think he had bad intentions. And Marcelo is not giving me medicine, he is giving me the silent treatment, which is one of the cruelest forms of emotional punishment. At least Javier talks to me, he listens to me. Right now, that's more than I can say for Marcelo. Final update. 2 months have passed, 2 months of a loneliness so deep that it has become my only companion. Marcelo's silence became permanent and my initial confusion has solidified into a bitter resignation. I have spent whole nights obsessed, wondering what went wrong, how a single sentence could have such a destructive power. In an act of masochism, I decided to delve into the past to look for answers. I started going through old hard drives looking for photos, and eventually I found a backup of my old chats with Javier. I wanted to find proof that he was the monster, that my idealization was a fantasy so I could hate him and maybe forgive myself a little. I spent hours reading our conversations, reliving the cycle of passion and toxicity, and then I found it. The argument, the final fight that led to our breakup more than 2 years ago. We were arguing about something stupid, some jealousy of his, I think. He was accusing me of flirting with a friend and I was defending myself. And then I read my own words, written in a blue chat bubble from a past I thought I had forgotten. I had written to him, you know what, Javier? At least my previous ex, David, trusted me. He would never have accused me of something like that. He knew what respect was. I stared at the screen, the air escaping from my lungs. The same sentence, the same structure, the same tactic. I had used the idealized ghost of a previous ex to hurt my current partner. It hadn't been an impulsive slip-up with Marcelo, an unfortunate word in the heat of the moment. It was a pattern, a toxic and repetitive defense mechanism, a weapon that I unsheathed every time I felt cornered in an argument, designed to invalidate my partner's feelings and win the battle at any cost. The epiphany, however, did not bring me clarity or a desire to change. Instead, a strange and twisted sense of vindication took hold of me. I laughed, a dry, joyless laugh in the loneliness of my room. I knew it. It wasn't me, it was their problem. I got up and started pacing back and forth, my mind building a new and more solid fortress of self-justification. The proof was right in front of me. Javier had reacted exactly the same as Marcelo, with an icy fury, shutting down, ending the relationship. They had both done the same thing. This was not a flaw in my character, it was a fundamental flaw in theirs. It's male fragility at its finest. They're unable to withstand the slightest criticism, the smallest comparison. Their egos are so fragile that a simple sentence shatters them. It's not my fault that I am a passionate and honest woman who says what she feels at the moment. It's their fault for being too weak to handle it. My loneliness is not a punishment for my mistakes. It is the price I pay for being too real for a world of men who cannot handle the truth. And with that bitter certainty, I felt for the first time in months strangely at peace. The blame was not mine, it never had been. Popular Reddit comments on the final update. Anonymous User 6. You have been 1 centimeter away from self-awareness, and you have done a 180-degree turn to dive back into delusion. You have found irrefutable proof that you are a serial relationship saboteur, and your conclusion is that all men are the problem. It's like an arsonist who, after burning down 2 houses with the same method, concludes that the problem is that the houses are too flammable. Your ability to avoid responsibility is honestly worthy of a scientific study. OP's response. Call it delusion if you want. I call it finding a pattern of behavior, and the pattern is clear. Men don't accept being compared, they fall apart. If I have a pattern of telling the truth in the heat of the moment, they have a pattern of running away like cowards when they don't like that truth. Two different cases with the same result prove my theory, not yours. Science is on my side. Anonymous User 7. The peace you feel is not real peace, it is the comfort of victimhood. It is much easier to believe that you are a woman too real for fragile men than to accept the horrible truth that you are a person who hurts the people who love her in a very specific and repetitive way. You have chosen the narrative that absolves you, the one that allows you to remain the tragic protagonist instead of the architect of your own misery. It is an empty victory that guarantees you will keep repeating the same cycle over and over again. OP's response. Maybe the cycle is not me. Maybe the cycle is choosing men who are not on my emotional level. My victory is not empty, it is a revelation. Now I know what to look for and, more importantly, what to avoid. I don't need to change. I need to change the type of man I choose. The problem is not my weapon, it is that I have been using it on the wrong targets. Anonymous User 8. Congratulations. You have achieved the ultimate justification. By blaming an entire gender for fragility, you have immunized yourself against any future self-reflection. Your loneliness now has a noble cause. You are too honest, too passionate. You are not alone because of your actions, but because of your virtues. It is the most solid fortress of self-deception I have ever seen. Enjoy your bitter and lonely peace. You have earned it. OP's response. I will. Thank you. At least now I know I'm not crazy, I'm just alone. And sometimes, being true to yourself means walking alone. At least I'm not living a lie, pretending everything is fine and keeping my feelings to myself like they do. In the end, I'm the only one who has been honest in all of this.